Greetings, family, at the Black Dot Cultural Learning Center. So, are we technology all straight? Everybody can hear? Everybody can see? We got our master technician, brother Jamu here. Got us ready and rocking and ready to go for Black August and the resurrection of pigment power. So, you will be my clicker too?
Yes, I am.
All right. So, the reason why we're here today, because we are in a time frame of August, one of the months of the year, but there always seems to be some dynamic things that happen during August. Do we ever pay attention to that? We know we just passed something called Juneteenth, and now we have the world acknowledging Juneteenth as a date, but people didn't know about Juneteenth. Now we have Black August. People don't know what Black August is. So for me, one of the people who acknowledged and gave a good layout of what Black August really meant was Mumia Abu-Jamal. Next slide. If you don't know who Mumia Abu-Jamal is, you need to know. Just like if you didn't know what the Juneteenth was. Just like if you now don't know what Black August is. Well, you need to know who Mumia Abu-Jamal is. The brother's sitting on death row. The brother has been vilified, saying that he's a cop killer. And we know about the dynamics of this law and legal system sometimes where they don't necessarily look at us and give us the right treatment. So even in jail, the brother is deciphering what's going on in the world. He may be able to talk about the politics of any government while he's sitting behind bars. So live from death row. If you look at and you go to prisonradio.org, he has a commentary on Black August. And so I'm going to give you a little layout of how Mumia Abu-Jamal explains it. Next slide, please. So Mumia Abu-Jamal says, Black August has many markers throughout the long history of resistance in the Americas. That's what we're now talking about, resistance. Why does it always seem to happen in August, this hot month? There are more than we could ever recount here. And so this is not the totality. This is not all. This is just a way of expressing some that give us an indication of how important we need to look at August. August 1619. Oh, 1619 project. Y'all heard about that? People trying to cancel that. When dark-skinned Africans were unloaded from a ship in the English colony of Jamestown, Virginia, chained and stolen captives of a vicious race war against black life by the merchant princes of Europe. We're still experiencing that. African people, black people, have been extracted from their land. And we're going to say it was a trade. It wasn't a trade, can't call stick up a trade. It was theft. You took a people. So now we deal with the issue of the time frame. It can happen in the August time frame. August 1791. Africans, mostly from the Congo, held religious services in the dark of the night. They prayed to their ancient gods of African memory and vowed to fight against every slave owner and overseer in the land. They vowed to not stop until free or dead. African people, who are we talking about? The Haitian Revolution. If they did not do what they did, and again, in August, organizing, we would not have what we have today. So Haiti has caught hell from the Western Empire because they fought against the Western Empire. That was so-called the richest place during colonial time periods where they were managing to run things. And when the Africans disrupted that, it changed the whole dynamic of how we look at the world. Next slide, please. August 21st, 1831. The explosive rebellion of Nat Turner turned Southern society inside out. Now, Nat Turner was no lunatic. When you read the stories and read the books, they call him a lunatic. Nah, he was talking about this revolution. Get your foot off my neck. You saw that movie, Birth of a Nation, that Nate Parker did on Nat Turner. So as he's describing this, Nat Turner was doing what he could to relieve us from the oppression. And if it means you got to kill to do that, it's going to happen. But he was organized during them summer months, August. Then there were at least 3 Seminole Wars. And one of them ended in August 14th, 1842. And the Seminoles were considered to be some of the strong amalgamation of Africans and native peoples of this land down there in Florida. So that whole word Seminole, you know what Seminole really means? Wild people. I wonder where that came from. You heard of the Maroons, French word maroons, Cimarroons, Spanish word maroon, and you know the Maroons in Jamaica, the Maroons in Brazil. So those that have gone to the hills to what? Get away from the oppressor, establish their own environments, their own nations within a nation. So the Seminoles were the same kind of dynamic, but the Europeans called them wild people. August 30th, 1856, John Brown in the Battle of Osawatomie. Now he was a white man who advocated and practiced armed insurrection to end all slavery. That's 1856. That's it. What's that word? Osawatomie. There was another place that he actually had a battle. It was called Potawatomi. Now that's 1856. But what y'all remember or may know about John Brown is Harper's Ferry. But that was 1859. That means for years he was fighting. Frederick Douglass wasn't doing that. Frederick Douglass wasn't picking up the gun. Frederick Douglass was the orator. This, I can't call him a white guy. I can't call him, he's not an enemy, because he was fighting for our liberation. And that's the point about when we talk about Black August, it's really about how do you fight? How do you stand up against those who are trying to trample you? So John Brown, someone we need to respect. The Watts Rebellion against police brutality, August 11th to 16th, 1965. August 5th, 1970, and the return of Huey P. Newton from imprisonment. August. Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton.
Closer to the mic because they're hearing muffled. Maybe we might want to bring it up or.
Maybe is it on?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
on.
So, next slide. If you have ever read anything about George Jackson, Blood in My Eye was one of my favorite books. Here's a brother, went to jail, I think age 18, $70 they said he stole. Life. My goodness. How's a brother, 18 years old, in prison, gonna have an influence on me because of what he wrote, because of what he experienced about changing the way that you see the world? So if you see that quote right there, anyone who can pass the civil service examination today can kill me tomorrow with complete immunity. I'm going to come back to that statement, but I want you to see his book, Blood in My Eye, right there in the middle. So he really is a political prisoner. And I found this kind of bewildering that I had to go to Brazil to see this. What am I saying? Augusto Negro means Black August in Portuguese. So I'm there in Brazil watching TV. Can't really understand because it's all in Portuguese. So I'm seeing this one image where a brother's running from jail and boom, they shoot him and he's on the ground. I'm like, what is this? And then Augusto Negro comes up and said, now really what is this? That's the end of it. I said, I gotta wait till this comes back on and watch it again. And when I watched it, oh, it was about George Jackson. Because you know he was gunned down in jail. He was considered a political prisoner, but he was indicating to the brothers what we need to do to organize. August. And you know his brother fought for him. His brother died for him while he was in jail. And so we got many political prisoners. I already mentioned Mumia Abu-Jamal. You got Mutula Shakur, Sundiata Acoli, Leonard Peltier, here in Atlanta, Jamil El-Amin, et cetera, et cetera. So Jamil El-Amin, again, you look at the cases, the government is not allowing certain information to be expressed, to be heard. That can't be justice. So we need to do whatever we can to support them because it could what be us. So George Jackson died for that. So he was assassinated August 21st. And so when we say anyone who can pass the civil service examination today can kill me tomorrow. Next slide. We don't understand that because we don't pay attention to that. We don't understand stuff like this happens. So now are you looking at the white people with the hats on and the smiles? Or are you looking at the date, Marianne, Indiana, in August 1930? Or are you looking at the brothers hanging? What do we see? Whatever we see, we don't look at anymore. We act like this trauma is something we don't need to pay attention to. It happened. And if we don't do something, guess what? It could happen again. So all those people that are sitting around watching, like, again, with compute immunity from what they just did. No one was prosecuted for doing that. Same thing with, you got lynches that have been carried on, and you know the brother in Alabama created the museum to help us now to acknowledge that. Next slide. So if we act like this never happened, that means you're not dealing with the trauma of what you need to do to release it, let it go, and move forward. You have many people now saying, oh, we don't need no 1619 project. We don't need all this race talk. What are you saying? Don't address issues that really happen? We had a discussion prior to while we were trying to get the technology going on about the black cities that are underwater because white people decimated them environments. South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. So why does that happen? Because we never paid attention, never knew what happened. So if you didn't know this happened, people standing around looking at a black man burn, and they got it on the bottom there. Michael Brown, Ferguson, Missouri, August. What happened to him? Brother got shot by a cop, and he left his body sitting on the ground. How many hours? 4 or 5. Who lets that happen but an animal? Who lets that happen but somebody who doesn't respect your humanity? So when we're talking about forget this, how am I supposed to forget that? No, I'll remember. Not to do some injustice, no, but I'm going to remember. Next slide, please. So in that concept of remembering, you have to go back. So when we say the resurrection of pigment power, we're talking about the resurrection will only occur through self-study. You got to know yourself. The people who are now burning you like that, hanging you like that, how could they ever want to teach you right? That's not going to happen. It comes up to you. You have to do that. So my travels to Kemet, and I'm seeing this image in the sand, and it looks just like me. I feel like that's us. What? I hadn't been told that before. And so you see on the right side there, the image that was drawn during the 1700s, Count Boney, French, wrote a book called Ruins and Empires. Went there and wrote down and saw and documented, so that's what it looked like. It even used to have a beard. It had a little crest on the top. I mean, so over years, these things fall off. Actually, some of those things are in people's museums. But the image of an African, and the word Hor-Im-Aket, it means Horus on the horizon. You just know it as the Sphinx, is what the European told you to think like that. But it's called Hor-Im-Aket, Horus on the horizon. So, with this August and the resurrection, someone who tried to resurrect our minds, Marcus Garvey. Africa, rise up, accomplish what you will. When was he born? August 17th. This is an important time frame, important experience that we need to acknowledge every time August rolls around. So we're going to discuss and show the way that it's kind of like some spiritual element of how we relate to it, but also how our bodies are then connected to this. Next slide, please. So again, if you're not reading, you're not going to get the information. If you're not studying, you're not going to be exposed to the proper knowledge. So from Ivan Van Sertima's edited journals to Wayne Chandler's Ancient Future to we just lost a soul. May his soul rest in peace. Runoko Rashidi. Runoko Rashidi had some articles in there and edited some of these journals. You got Tony Browder. He's over there in Africa. Excavation site. The ASA project. I mean, the books got Robert Bauval, European. You got brother over there in England. Robin Walker, who wrote When We Ruled, and you got Runoko Rashidi, who communicated with him. So all I'm saying here is, guess what? We're at the what? Black Dot Learning Center?
Yes.
Black Dot Cultural Center? Black Dot. If you don't connect the dots, you don't see nothing. You got to connect the dots to the people who did the work. If you don't study what they study, guess what? It gets lost. You don't have any memory of it. That's why we can't remember what the people did to us in the past. We act like, oh, we're just friends now. Oh, forget all that stuff that happened in the past. Okay. Next slide. So change the narrative. You can talk about you getting beat down, but do not talk about when you strike back. That means it's easy to say, oh yeah, the civil rights stuff, you know, yeah, they show you all in the counters. I mean, that was some tough stuff. Be sitting down on some counter waiting to get served and somebody spitting on you and you're not supposed to do nothing. Somebody smacking you on the back of the head and you're not supposed to do nothing. They like showing you them images. They won't show you Nat Turner cut somebody's head off though, would they? They won't show you what you saw in like say a movie like Sankofa. Many people haven't probably never heard of Sankofa. Been out for years. Halle Jarima, Ethiopian film director, put the movie out. How many people talk about that? Not a lot. There's another movie called Farewell to Uncle Tom. Who did that? Some Italian film directors. So this country, the people who teach these people in this country are not going to talk about that. So all I'm saying is that we need to change the narrative. And so I have right here, not the punishment rock, but the resistance rock. What does that really mean? Next slide. Come back to that. Because as I traveled to Ghana with Master Jegnas, Wade Nobles, Naim Akbar, still alive, still producing, still productive, retired, enjoying life. Traveling there to Ghana, we went to Accra, Kumasi, and to the top of Ghana, Tamale, and came on back. So we saw the countryside. So we went to the slave camps where we were taken, extracted, and then brought to the coastline to then be shipped off. Next slide, please. So as we are then traveling through the land and seeing the people, we're asking some questions about, so who are the people who actually took us? Who are the people who actually extracted us? So those that we met, they were like, well, we've dealt with them and we've had discussions with them about things and, you know, dealt with them as families, because basically, you know, the Europeans pitting people against people, divide and conquer. So one of the most powerful times we had was going into the interior to talk to the Native Africans. Not on the coastline, because they looking when you see you. Was that Ice Cube? Was that Beyonce? No, but when you go to the deep interior, they, oh, brother, sister, welcome home. So much more beautiful in the interior where they're not caught up in the media images. So this is the beginning of the Maafa. Maafa deals with, again, a great, horrendous, destructive experience that people have gone through that we are still going through. The Maafa didn't stop. Just because you were extracted right here, 1600s, and now you're taken here in 2021, we're here. The Maafa is still happening. So that's the beginning journey. Next slide. And the powerful thing about this is, if that's hundreds of miles away from the coast and there were no buses, there were no trucks, you were walking just to get to the coastline, shackles on. We don't understand it because we don't study it. You don't study it, you'll never know it. So, cemetery for the dead slaves. And probably need to even change the word slaves. They were captives. Change the narrative. Next slide. So this is sacred ground. And so those who ran away, they were beat on the punishment rock. That's what they call it, the punishment rock. It's no punishment rock, it's resistance rock. You were resisting this oppression. You're resisting the captivation of your spirit and your mind. So that's really not no punishment rock, that's the resistance rock. Next slide. So when we were there, Brother Nobles poured libations, making the statement that we need to change this to the resistance rock. All the events that we were doing, I was kind of recording. This event wasn't recorded because it felt that spiritual enough that this is sacred to understand that people who resisted and tried their best to not be who we are today, to live on their own land, to be free. So that was a powerful experience there on the motherland. So the power of definition. We needed to redefine the story. Next slide. So here's a rock there on the land where, again, they're looking for the runaway slaves. And I have on there looking out for Shango. So if you didn't see Sankofa, Shango was played by Muta Baruka, Jamaican artist. So Shango was always what? Trying to get away. Shango was always trying to get away, and so he was always either in lockdown, he was beat, but he was a revolutionary. So here now looking out for a Shango. And one of the most powerful comments that he made to others who weren't ready to run and struggle, he says, trying to tell them, when you gonna get on your belly and crawl like a snake? Because a snake will eat whatever's in the belly of the frog. So you can't half-ass revolution. When you gonna get on your belly and crawl like a snake? Because the snake will eat whatever it is in the belly of the frog. You can't just bite the little toe, take the little eye. You better swallow that molly folly whole. So we talking about Shango was presenting that and expressing that, and that's who you gotta capture. Next slide. Can't have no fear though. Had an opportunity to what? Swim with the crocodiles. Nah, I ain't really swim with them, I just touched them. But the crocodiles, they Africans tamed animals. I mean, sure, you can feed the animal something now, ain't gonna be hungry to what, eat you, but lions, we had lions as pets. You know, all the animals that they're on the African continent, we lived in harmony with them. Today, you now got gorillas and chimpanzees fighting one another. Why? Because it deals with food, global crisis. Someone's messed up the planet. Everything is disordered, and we're dealing with that right now with this pandemic. So we now have a situation where fear is what's driving a lot of people's behavior. Next slide, please. Fear is not something that should be driving your behavior. You should be strong enough to what? Fight through, but if you don't know, you get caught up in the system. School to prison pipeline. This is the 2021 version. Devastating. Here we have a situation where in Baltimore, you got a county where they got a 1.0 GPA. You heard me loud and clear. You can read it too. Baltimore City Schools has reached an alarming low in student performance. Project Baltimore has learned during the first 3 quarters of this year, nearly half of high school students in city schools earn a grade point average of below a D. That's just one county. What's happening in Georgia? What's happening in South Carolina? What's happening in New Jersey? What's happening in any state? So, the city schools declined an interview, but told us in a statement consistent with the experience of many districts across the country, the COVID-19 pandemic created significant disruptions to student learning. And so now if you already are fearing, I don't know, just going to school, you're already fearing, scared of yourself. You can never now study yourself because you're running from yourself. You don't respect yourself, so you're killing yourself. So now you got the homicides, you got the drama that's going on in our communities because people are not being educated properly. So it comes down to cultural centers like this in Lithonia, the Black Dot Cultural Center, cultural centers like this. If you don't have your own environment to teach your own people, it's not going to happen. So we need to be able to understand that because again, we have people being lost in the school system. Next slide. So we're psychologically crippled, mentally handicapped, spiritually devoid. Things have been made that way. One of my most recognized scholars I like to talk about is Frantz Fanon, wrote a book called Black Skin, White Mask. Page 9, he says, the black man wants to be white. The white man slaves to reach a human level. Just on a simple way of expressing that, I'm like, man, what does that really mean? There's a whole lot. You can understand why they can then look at a brother, just let him sit on the ground being shot. Remember that brother Tamir Rice, who got shot by a cop in 2 seconds after looking at him? Sister's right there. His sister now can't even go hug his brother. Her brother can't, and you got the boy just sitting there. Who does that? Someone who's trying to reach a human level. And here we are trying to be like them. Psychologically crippled. The whole world is backwards. The next one. A feeling of inferiority. That's where the problem becomes. That's why we got self-defeat and self-hatred going on, because we have an inferiority complex. No, it's a feeling of non-existence. You are nobody. Going through school, those kids get that 1 point GPA average. Maybe they're not told anything about themselves because they're not in the history book. They're jigaboos sitting on the corner, or they're just those slaves that were taken. Not African captive kings and queens taken. They took the best, the brightest, the medical doctors. They took the people who were in the legal system. They took the people, the construction people. You don't just take dumb people to be slaves. They took the best and the brightest. So as they were extracted, they now have a sense of now being inferior because you've been told you're inferior. Sin is Negro as virtue is white. All those white men in a group, guns in their hands, cannot be wrong. I am guilty. I do not know of what, but I know that I'm no good. You know, people walk down with their head down, scared to look up. So we're talking about an issue of existence. So we're psychologically crippled, and the educational system creates that. So how do you become resurrected out of that? You gotta self-study. No one's gonna teach you to get out that hole. They put you in the hole. Why are they gonna teach you how to get out the hole? Next slide, please. So for 9, birthday around the same time as mine, so fellow Leo, So for 9, the crippled veteran. This is now a story that he has about his brother speaking to a veteran of a war. The crippled veteran of the Pacific War says to my brother, resign yourself to your color the way I got used to my stump. We're both victims. Nevertheless, with all my strength, I refuse to accept the amputation. I feel in myself a soul as immense as the world, truly a soul as deep as the deepest of rivers. My chest has the power to expand without limit. Who's going to teach you that? You. Self-study. I'm not going to tell you that. But you got someone getting a black man to think that he's like an amputee. You crippled. Amputee can't run unless he has some crutches, some to help him out. So you're saying I'm crippled because I got blackness on my skin? Next slide. You say my chest and my hands expanded out. Who's that? Who's that a picture of? Jack Johnson. Unforgivable blackness. Kim Burns did a documentary on this, but Jack Johnson. It says they couldn't knock him out, so they tried to tear him down. So, he's a black man, but you know what the white people called him? Okay, first of all, who was he? He was a boxer. Boxing down around like 1900s. I mean, how many black people are boxing? And at this point, boxing and beating white people up. They have some films, you can see some things, but you're not going to show that, are you? So he was winning, he was a champion, but you know what they called him? He was an Ethiopian. Reverse, yes, I told you. They called him an Ethiopian. He's from Texas. They just don't want you thinking that you can do that. Granville Woods, inventor. Did a whole lot with electricity and transistors and helping railroad tracks to run right. But they said he wasn't a black man. They said he was like some Australian Aborigine connection. So they'll do whatever to let you know that you, this African American living here, oh, you can't do that. So constructively, psychologically can cripple your mind, but Jack Johnson fought through that. He gave Muhammad Ali his drive. Muhammad Ali saw him and saw what he was doing, and so he didn't, Muhammad Ali didn't mess with the, European in terms of the women and all that, but for Muhammad Ali, he looked at Jack Johnson as somebody to follow in his revolutionary spirit. Next slide, please. So when we deal with that blackness, which people are scared of, I like this image here. It's a 1992 magazine with a sister on front of it. And so, it ain't a white woman, ain't Asian, that's a black woman with that beautiful skin color. Sitting on a computer chip. On the left side of her is a DNA molecule. Interesting, on a computer chip. The right side of her is a molecule looking like melanin, carbon-based molecule. And the far side of her is the Melanin. You call them hieroglyphics, but that's African writing. All on one screen. Someone's studying you, you're not studying yourself. Someone knows about your potential, your capabilities, but you don't know. So it comes a time period where you got to start self-studying, so now you understand that, you know what, maybe I'm not inferior. I'm not going to say I'm superior, because that gets caught up in all that jargon where, oh, so now this is reverse racism stuff. Nobody's talking that. We're just talking about your potential. So be able to rise to another occasion. So when I showed you that Jack Johnson, and they said they couldn't stop him, beat him, instead of tear him down. And speaking of a black woman, next slide, please. So the sister, Sha'Carri Richardson, that didn't make the Olympics, they couldn't beat her, so they tear her down. Asking the sister some question in some audience, some white men interviewing the black sister who's barely out of high school, asking her some questions, and I think that's when she found that her mother had passed away. In some interview, you're gonna put the sister under that kind of stress and strain, and she's now in Oregon. I'm not saying it's right or wrong in terms of the smoking, the marijuana, and what she did, because she's an athlete. The point is, she was smoking on the track, but she got caught smoking, and so they took her down. So now with the Olympics, she didn't get a chance to shine. But y'all know some people shine the Olympics. Pigment power at the 2021 Tokyo Summer Olympics. Now I got a blank, because I just want you to tell me, what did you see in the Olympics? Who dominated the Olympics? Especially the Summer Olympics, especially them running races.
Gold, bronze, and silver medals.
Gold, bronze and silver medals in the long distances, the middle distances, and the sprints. That's pigment power. During the sunshine of the hot summer. So we're talking about, again, I don't even have to put any names down. I saw a little image of by land, by sea, and air. By land, we're talking about track runners, like Sha'Carri Richardson. By sea, we're talking about Simone Emanuel, swimming. And by air, we're talking about Simone Biles. Dominate, primarily black woman, doing that thing. Ain't like the brothers ain't doing, because we can do that too. But that's the point about, they know your power and your immense nature. And so now it's a matter of, do you understand it? And do you use it properly? So that's why we got to go down deeper into the science of this. So, I don't know if y'all know the old school part of Funkadelics. You know?
Yeah.
And so they have a song called Flashlight. I don't know if you ever listened to it. But Flashlight talks about, one of the last comments on it, it talks about under the sun. So I'm gonna play it for you real quick. So, Parliament Funkadelics, Earth, Wind, and Fire, they used to play music that referenced how we were involved in the world, in the land, how the seasons impacted us. So I can't get it exactly right here, but the one about and at the very end, we talk about everybody's got a little light under the sun, under the sun, under the sun. So the sun is important for us. If you don't have life without the sun. Baba Johnny, would you flash that for me? So the sun. August is between June, September. June, July, August, September. So August is that hot month. So we're talking about a time frame. So think about us traveling on Earth around the sun. And then here in the United States, probably the Northern Hemisphere, we get this intensity during the August months. So Black August is really heat and intensity. So beyond just the heat, just the environment is spiritually charged. And that's why when I started off and showed you all those cases and things that have happened during the August months, there's a reason why they were happening during August and not January, February, but August. So there's a 94-day spread from the, can you minimize the people so I can show the whole screen up top to the left?
See it.
Okay.
You gotta do it from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 94-day spread from the solstice to the equinox. So June 21st when summer starts, September 23rd when fall begins. So 94-day spread. So that's really 25% of the year. So there's a lot going on during this time frame. And so you now got certain parts of the country burning up during this time frame. Next slide, please. So with this intensity, climate change is leading many Americans to look for new places to live. And it ain't just America's got problems. You saw over there in Belgium, Netherlands, they got floods. You see in other parts of the world, the places burning up, like on fire. So we just had an earthquake, tell me, in Haiti. So the world is, I don't know, Mother Nature's saying something. So during this time frame of August, you got Europeans saying this: I feel like I'm going to just die. It's so hot. I don't think I'm going to make it through this one. Every summer is worse, hotter than the last. Guess what? That's Arizona. It's going to get worse. But the sun is a generator. I ain't complaining about the sun. I mean, somebody messed up the climate. Well, y'all got to deal with that. The native peoples of the land said this was going to come. The native peoples of the land said you got to live peace and harmony with the world. Native peoples of the land said you can't keep doing this. Guess what? This is what's happening now. So some people aren't going to be able to survive dealing with this climate and the heat. Next slide, please. So, August is perfect for the alignment of revolution. So when I say 90 days, 92 days, you got a 90-degree angle, you got revolution, just ready. So 90-degree heat, it was 90 degrees here in Atlanta today. Hot. 90-degree angle, so you think about the Gregorian calendar, you know they messed it up, because now they don't have 1 month with 30, 1 day 28, 1 with 31, so you know it's messed up. So we don't know what really day it is. But you got 30, 31, 31, that's 92 days with the Gregorian calendar for those 3 months. If those who follow the Mayan calendar, you know that there's actually 13 moons throughout the year. Each moon is what? On a 28-day cycle. 13 times 28 is what? 364. And it's a day at a time. That's usually July 25th, 26th, and then now you got 365 days. So 90 days times 4 seasons, 360. So the 90 becomes important as a what? Alignment. So 90-degree angle. That's how we built some of our pyramids, built the temples. I mean, off of what? Geometry. So I'm just saying that August lines you up for revolution. That's why all those things we said in the beginning dealt with, again, lining you up. Next slide, please. So the sun is a solar generator. Solar, not just for the heat in the house to generate electricity for the house, but your soul. You know you feel much better on a sunny day. If it's cloudy, you know you're not feeling too well. And there's biological reasons why that happens. So as a solar generator, the sun is key and critical. So there are what? Some people that can't handle the sun. We just said how some people are thinking, oh, I can't handle this heat. It means they get frustrated, they get flustered, and guess what? Make bad decisions, like maybe what, shoot somebody. So we got all this violence and all this stuff going on during the pandemic where people can't relate to one another because the solar generator is not working right. Next slide, please. So our ancient African ancestors studied the sun. You had Akhenaten who what? Praised Ra, R-A, Ra. Sun, Ra. This is a picture of Akhenaten and Nefertiti sitting there with their children around. The sun rays coming down. It's powerful because you see the sun rays on the skin are like little hands. Sun rays on the skin or just on the head are like little hands. But around the nose region, those same sun rays are what? Ankhs. What is an ankh for? A symbol for life. They were studying and understood the importance of the sun. If you ever been to Africa, it's hot. Some places it's warm. Some places it's cold. But Egypt, Kemet, what we talking about here, is asphalt hot, black, dark. So you know they want white people there building this. So here you have, again, honoring the sun way back in time, knowing how important it is. Next slide, please. So the brain becomes now a key, because that's what I studied. As a neuroscientist, physiological psychologist, study the brain. So fear has been generated in us during this pandemic. All you're worried about is what they're telling you on the news and the media. Turn that TV off. Turn the media off. Because you're living by what someone else wants you to believe and live by, and so you're getting caught up. So fear. So neural networks in your brain with mirror properties may ultimately be responsible for empathy, language, and social behavior. So what you keep seeing in all them images of us being shot down, beat down, that's trauma. They keep on showing you the person gets shot down, beat down, that's trauma. They keep showing you them same images. Police brutality, someone getting shot, you keep seeing it. Now you got the whole issue of the pandemic. Oh, you got this Delta variant. What's coming next? Lambda. What's coming next? Zugo. What's coming next? Something's going to keep coming. It's going to keep scaring you and keep generating fear in your brain. It's not a good thing. Next slide, please. So the brain is the most elaborately constructed entity in the universe. It has everything you need to do to construct whatever you want. But if you have self-doubt, you'll never be able to do. So if you look at the brain here, on the left side there, you got a brain with 2 hemispheres, a left and a right. Everybody's got 2 hemispheres. So you really got one brain, but 2 hemispheres. So in the middle of the brain, all this white area, it's kind of like tracks, like pathways for things to travel through. So you got a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, but they must connect and talk somehow, and they talk by this thing, this area called the corpus callosum. So that connects the left and right brains. Now there's an area that many people have talked about. It's deep there in the center. See the little pink thing there? Anybody know what that might be? Pineal gland. medulla oblongata and the pons, those are now areas that are deep in. Here's the pons right here. Here's the medulla below it. Here's the midbrain. All that is protected. It can't really get to it. So the medulla is for like vital functions. Breathing, heart rate, respiration, all that. Those are vital. That's why you can't just knock somebody out by hitting the top of the head. You gotta hit them real hard. Because those deep centers are protected. So when you start talking about the brain and the pineal gland deep in there, but guess what? It's sitting in fluid. It's just floating there. So it's not even bilaterally symmetrical. Like it's not one on the left, one on the right. It's just one sitting there in the middle of the brain. Next slide, please. So in development, melanin is a complex molecule. Melanin is a pigment, but it's also a complex biopolymer. Biology, because it's biological. Polymer, because it can be constructed in many ways. Has many elements in it, and I'll show you a picture of one. So as a chemical structure, in its darkness, it absorbs. We had the black dot. I was trying to figure out, should I wear a black shirt? I was hot out today, it's 9 degrees. I ain't wearing black today. So I was trying to figure out, how is it that I can kind of explain the issue of blackness? Well, you all know, black draws heat. When it's hot out, you wear something white, it reflects. You're cooler. But if it's dark, you got some problems. But it's important, when you see this orange in this embryo that's developing at 54 days old, melanin is at the very earliest stages of making sure your nervous system is developing properly. If it's not there, you may suffer from things like spinal bifida, neural tube defects. That's not a good thing. That quarter is showing you the size of the embryo during that time frame. That's how small it is, but melanin is there, and if it's not there, your nervous system is not going to be constructed properly. Next slide. So beyond that nervous system also was the heart. Now, if you see right here, that's like a cross section of that embryo I just showed you. So the cross section, the spinal cord is developing, and you see right here in the middle, spinal cord, and then up top there, these something called the neural crest. Neural crest. These are cells that travel from the nervous system and then go to external places like the skin, like adrenal medulla, like the pigment in your eye, which means it all comes from a source, like a black dot, comes from a source. And then as it grows and develops into these other areas, it's color coded here to show where it's going to go. So without that melanin early on, again, the body's not going to properly develop. So that's the beginning. Next slide, please. So during this development, I mean, the cells are rapidly firing during this development. You have something called gap junctions. What does this mean? That you have cells lining up so it's easy flow for information to get through the cells. Not like you gotta wait for it to touch a receptor, get a response, and then something. No, it's a clean, open gap. So these two cells right here, you blow it up, these gaps line up, and it causes for quick active thinking, quick active not motivation, but activation of the cells. And so that's why we're talking about think of thoughts at the speed of light. I can at this moment think of something happened to me in kindergarten, something happened to me when I was in college, and talking to you today when we were playing outside, and I can remember all that at one time. So can you. But I'm just saying, that's how the brain works, speed of light. So you now have to activate that. You don't have just one hemisphere of the brain, like just the left, or just one hemisphere, just the right. The left hemisphere and right must work together, and that's how you enhance your capabilities. But we're taught in this society right now to be left brain oriented, which means you're only focusing on linear thinking. Not holistic thinking, but linear, straight ahead. Just pass the test, just standardized testing, circle a bubble, but do you really understand that? So we have to rise above that. Next slide, please. So with these gap junctions, let me just fast forward here. Basically we eat electricity. We eat ions, sodium, calcium, magnesium. You get that through your diet. You don't get it in your diet, guess what? You got some problems, like start cramping up or your heart ain't working right. So you need to have ions in your diet. So the ions get through your system through these little pores. So this isn't a gap junction, but this is showing you again that the chemicals must flow through cells in order for the body to work properly. So if you don't have a lot of sodium, guess what? You might not have no neural functioning going on. No chloride ions, guess what? The cell's not going to fire properly. So this is a layered, this is the cell layer, it's called lipid bilayer, but this green thing is where the chemicals flow in and out. Next slide, please. So there's a place between two cells that talks. So a neuron is the name of a brain cell. So one neuron talks to another neuron. Where they communicate is something called a synapse. So synapse is a book called The Synaptic Self, how our brains become who we are. So here's got one cell, here's got another cell and its extension. That area right there becomes different for all of us because we all have different experiences. So the synapse becomes key and critical to study how is it that we form our thoughts, our personalities, our behavior. So the cell in the brain, a neuron, looks just like the cell in the skin. Next slide, please. So before I show you that, rapid fire electrical communication. So there's the cell that produces or has the ions flowing through, like the calcium and the magnesium and the fluoride. And here's that one, the gap junction, where again, I'm just going to show you the comparison. When they are lined up, information happens quickly and fast. I don't know if you like hip hop music, because there's some that is good, there's some that's bad. That trap music, I don't know, they're saying the same thing over and over, and it's just drawn out music. But if you got some people that got a rhythm, and they can throw some polysyllabic terminology and just stay on rhythm, that's higher brain functioning. Not everybody can rap. Not everybody can do hip hop and dance to it at the same time. That's higher brain function. So we start talking about your brain lining up properly, you can do those things. Next slide, please. So when I said the brain cells and the skin cells look the same, look at that. That's the neuron with its long axon going to another cell. You got these extensions here called dendrites. They're receiving from other cells. So that long extension in this reception, this is the cell body, that looks just like what's in your skin. This right here is a melanocyte. That is the cell in your skin that produces melanin. Doesn't look like a brain cell to you? So it's almost like your skin is the largest organ in your body. So it communicates in ways that we don't understand because we don't pay attention to it. The sun's trying to tell you, be in tune with nature. So the skin, this melanocyte, has these granules that come up to the top called melanin, and as those granules then become equal and smooth, you get your even skin tone, your pigment. Some people lack the enzymes to make the pigment, therefore they are lighter than others. So that's why people have different shades. So in terms of understanding melanin in nature, again, melanin is a complex biopolymer, so it's everywhere in nature. If you took a bite of an apple, banana, put it on the table, the oxygen around will cause that apple or that banana to turn brown. That's melanin. It's helping out what? To prevent spoilage. So if it's doing that in an object or like that, imagine what it's doing in your body, in your skin. You get cut, that melanin will form over, and you never knew you got cut before. So it's a self-generating molecule. So the actual process of transmitting or channeling energy is based on electromagnetic nature of the body. Where if you took your finger and put it in your mouth and put it in an electric socket, I think you might get shocked. Why? Because you got electricity running through your body. Melanin becomes a conduit. It's like a semiconductor, and people are studying that. So it's a semiconductor at room temperature. So people are using it for technology. It permits direct communication with nature. So we look at us as being more spiritual. What makes you more spiritual? Is it the body? Is it just your thinking? Is it your connection to nature via melanin? I think so. Next slide. So for your notes to remember, it can function as an antioxidant. That means it prevents dangerous substances from destroying your cells, like free radicals. It stops bad elements from destroying your DNA. So antioxidant. You hear about it when you start thinking about food items or creams you put on your skin. But fruits, berries, pigmented items are antioxidants. So melanin's a natural one. Nerve conduction facilitator. Facilitate, this means makes it go quicker, faster. So where you find melanin, it helps the nerve impulses run faster. The locus ceruleus, a like the blue dot in Sanskrit. It's there deep in that brain stem. Norepinephrine. It's a place called the substantia nigra. It's dark in color. Substantia nigra, that's what it means in Latin. Melanin. If it's not dark, got some problems. We'll see it later on. I'll show it to you. So it's helping the impulses to go quicker. And the last one, energy transformer. Maybe a little bit more difficult to comprehend, but we're saying energy's out here in the environment. Your body must now interpret it. Meaning that there are photons of energy making you see light, but what is that? Well, your eye processes that in the back of it called the retina. If there's no blackness in the back of your eyeball, you're not seeing. The retina, there's a pigmented cell layer there. So there's a disease called retinitis pigmentosus. So where people lack it, therefore they're virtually blind. You know how it is for those who live in the northern environments where it snows and it's snowing out, and now you're out in the basement, you kind of come outside and you really can't see. You're blinded by the white light. That's how it is with the eye. And then the ear, sound. What is sound? Sound waves, sound, vibration. You don't see the sound waves, but your body recognizes it in the inner ear. There's inner ear melanin. So that's why some people are hearing certain sounds different than other people. Frequencies of sound. So we're saying as an energy transformer, that's what it's processing, energy. Next slide, please. So the molecule itself could have methyl groups on it, amine groups, carboxyl groups, all these, that image right there in the middle. That's how complex melanin is. Almost like a indestructible element. It latches on to things, or should we say things latch on to it. So you got pesticides, opiates, cocaine, alcohol, methamphetamine, antipsychotic drugs. All the elements that are in the world can latch on to that, and over time that can be problematic. First of all, it's protecting you, because it's neutralizing what? Toxicity. So you don't die of natural causes, you die of toxicity over time. So your body over the long run, the reason why they say what, black don't crack, or you're looking so young, it's because that melanin's what keeping the skin looking young by what? Protecting it. Next slide, please. So melanin research on electricity. The dark brown melanin, called eumelanin, colors the hair and eyes, we just talked about that. It also has long been known to conduct electricity. And so now I can't show you this, actually could, but I have on here going to a site where it shows you they're using robots now by using melanin. Help the reactions go quicker and faster. So this is 2019, so it's not like it's new research. People have been studying this for a while. Next slide, please. Wi-Fi. And I believe we have Wi-Fi in the Black Dog Cultural Center. Wi-Fi is everywhere. On your phone. Personally, I don't keep my Wi-Fi on. I don't keep my Bluetooth on. Especially when it's around you, near you. You shouldn't do that. Repeated Wi-Fi studies show that Wi-Fi causes oxidative stress, sperm testicular damage, neuropsychiatric effects including EEG changes, apoptosis, which means cell death, cellular DNA damage, endocrine changes, and calcium overload. Now the calcium piece is kind of critical here because too much calcium activation could impact the way the heart works. Not a good thing. Combine this with people having these so-called heart problems after taking this vaccine, not good. So we're talking about Wi-Fi itself, you know, it can have some activations on cells that you never thought about, don't pay attention to. Personally, I never use the phone next to my head. Cell phone, that is. Use the earpiece or speakerphone, because you can feel the radiation on your head. So why would you want to put that next to your head? Next slide, please. So this one, it says a certain gigahertz of frequency alter gene expression in cultured human cells. I know this could go over your head, but I want to make this plain and clear to you. Why? Because this is dealing exactly with black people. Why? Because it says right there, the biological effects of radio frequency fields, blah, blah, blah. It says telecommunication to exposure cultured human HL60 cells. It's probably over your head, but HL60 cells. You know what HL60 cells are? Henrietta Lacks. The black woman cells who they exploited, and you read the articles, it just says a patient. They don't say who she is. This woman's cells are still alive Black woman, melanated, cells are still alive and people are studying this stuff. We observed that 221 genes alter their expression after a 2-hour exposure. The number of affected genes increased to 759 after 6-hour exposure. Functional classification of the affected genes reveals that apoptosis, again that's cell death related genes, were among the upregulated ones and the cell cycle genes among the downregulated ones. This environment is affecting people. You're melanated, you might be affected more than others. This whole issue about 5G and all this technology, we don't pay attention. It doesn't treat everybody the same. It doesn't impact everybody's body the same. And now we have evidence showing that it can what? Alter your genes. Next slide, please. So, medical devices. So, an oxiometer to measure oxygen levels. Can they be racist? It's just a device. How can that be racist? Like, is this microphone racist? I mean, how do you say that? Because we're talking about the technology and what happens when you see how it works. Next slide, please. So, it says, are fingertip pulse oximeters racist? This question strikes you as absurd, but according to a study published in 2020, these devices significantly overestimate the level of blood oxygen in black patients in real-world conditions, meaning that black people might have to be sicker than white people before they qualify for treatment. For COVID-19 patients using these devices to determine when to go to the hospital, this could be a matter of what? Life or death. It's just a device, but again, people are using things that don't necessarily treat us right to get treated. Next slide, please. So, this is just highlighting that same thing, but it's just unintended. But there's a lot of unintended things that happen in science that you don't understand. So, it says, similar biases in light-based technologies from film emulsifiers to soap dispensers to wearable fitness trackers. You know, you rush it to the airport, gotta get your bag, you're trying to get washed up and put your hand on the dispenser and the water come out. No soap come out. Because it ain't detecting your melanin. Or your melanin is blocking things that can't receive that. Who pays attention to that? Scientists create that, they ain't worried about it. They're just creating it all for white people's skin. So the issue is, scientifically, your body's different. We got to and we have to acknowledge that. If you don't, then guess what? You'll be exploited and taken advantage of. And that's why that black woman's cells are still being studied, and we don't even acknowledge that the reality of that's exploitation. Next slide. So, the pineal gland then becomes a source in the brain that can respond to those electromagnetic energy. Got to fast forward and make sure we complete in good enough time. But the pineal gland there is a receiver of energy. Even though it's deep there in the brain, it's still a receiver of energy, especially what? Sunlight. During the daytime, produces something called serotonin. During the nighttime, melatonin. So we're talking about one organ that can have a dramatic impact on your what? Circadian rhythms. Keeping you in tune with nature. Next slide, please. So, sunlight and darkness. I got in one of my chapters, this endocrinology of sunlight and darkness. So you now have the sun shining to the eye. It then takes a circuitous route, that is, I'll show you another slide that has that, from the eyeball down to the spinal cord.
So actually, from the eyeball, it goes to the hypothalamus, to the spinal cord, and then to the pineal gland. So this is the circuitous route we're speaking of. So again, this melatonin is a hormone released from the pineal gland at nighttime. In the daytime, it's serotonin. So you see here visible light through the eyeball, initiates the pineal gland to cause some reactions. So I'll show you the next slide, some places in the brain and also then the chemistry involved here. But could it possibly be that light or photons impact the top of the head and then come in? Interesting. So the melatonin then goes into the bloodstream, and it can have an impact on your granules in your skin to retract the granules so that more sunlight can get in. It also has an impact on reproductive function, primarily in animals. You see it during the winter months. The sun is not shining as much anymore, so melatonin is more excreted, and so animals have then a lower rate of reproduction because it's not good to reproduce during the wintertime. So what we have here is that melatonin helps to slow down reproduction. We cannot say that happens in humans because we can have sex all year around and reproduce all year round. So when we speak of the circuitous route, so here you see the eyeball, the retina, going to the retina hypothalamic tract to the hypothalamus, and then it goes to the spinal cord and then leaps back up here to the pineal gland in the middle. So when you look at this image here, perhaps you can't see it, but this is really like a third eye. So our ancient African ancestors spoke of the third eye, and here we have the pineal gland sitting in the middle of the head. One eyeball, two eyeball, three, third eye. So those pineal hormones are very important. So again, from light, the photon hits the eye in the retina, goes to the hypothalamus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is a specific neuron system there, goes to the cervical ganglion, like I said, around the spinal cord, and then it stimulates the pineal gland to release a chemical called norepinephrine. So norepinephrine then becomes a important chemical to stimulate that pinealocyte. So anytime we see the word CYTE, that's referring to a cell. So this whole thing right here is the pinealocyte. So inside the pinealocyte, the norepinephrine initiates a cascade of events that causes tryptophan to convert to serotonin, to convert to melatonin, and that then gets into your bloodstream to have an effect on your body. Now, tryptophan is an amino acid, so you know that amino acids are your building blocks for your proteins. Without them, you do not have a lot of chemicals being made in your body. So tryptophan is the precursor molecule to make your serotonin and your melatonin. Perhaps you heard of tyrosine, but tyrosine is also a amino acid, and it helps to make your neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine and epinephrine. So beyond the pineal gland and its response to light, we also know that sunlight produces or helps to make vitamin D in your skin, and really it's not a vitamin, it's a steroid hormone. That's why we call it a vital amine. So it has amine groups on it, like NH3, so nitrogen and hydrogen. So vital, you can't exist without vitamin D. It will mess your body up if you lack it. Therefore, the sun becomes very important to help resurrect your pigment power. So from the sunlight, it hits the skin and it causes multiple reactions within the epidermis, and the reactions create this vitamin D to be converted to other elements that go to the bloodstream, impact the liver, impact the kidney, and all of this is important for circulating the vitamin D or the steroid hormone complex in your body. So if you look at the kidney, it's dark in color. You look at the liver, it's dark in color. So these organs aren't being touched by sunlight, but they're melanated. So the vitamin D being processed by melanated organs becomes very critical to maintaining life. So I call it sotriol, not me, but there's some researchers named Stump and Prevet came up with a term called sotriol to explain what a vitamin D really is. So a complex term again, but you get it from the sun. So the sun is something natural, but now we have these artificial elements being created in our environment, like these 5G towers, which are everywhere. So while we were home during the pandemic, these towers were going up and they're around, and we don't know exactly what's going to be the health risk of having these multiple towers around that emit this electromagnetic energy. So this 5G can be potentially dangerous to the body, and if the pineal gland is an organ that can receive electromagnetic energy, we think about homing pigeons or animals that know how to get home from miles away. That's the brain doing that. And it's these organs in the brain that help the animals be in tune with nature. Well, it's the same thing with the pineal gland with the human being. So these 5G towers in the long run may be problematic in terms of health risk. We know this because there's dangers with Tesla technology. HAARP, you can go ahead and look at these on your own, but HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. We might want to wonder why Haiti has all these earthquakes. Yes, it's on a fault line that is the structure of the that part of the island, Hispaniola. But why is it that Haiti has all these earthquakes? Can they be initiated from higher sources? SSS, silent sound spread spectrum, using sound to influence and alter people's consciousness. DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, you can look it up right now because they're creating chips to put in your body so that it can detect coronavirus before you have coronavirus. Wonder how that happens. How long have they been researching that? So DARPA becomes a danger in terms of our bodies and being controlled. PIS, psychotronic influence system. So words, sounds, music. You see how music is being used as a weapon now to control us and our thinking. So there's weapons for greedy people to dismantle and demagnetize your pigment power. Programmable human weapons. They exist. You might wonder why people are isolated now. They're going out into the public and everybody's kind of impatient and anxious, and some people are killing one another. Induce emotional states from stored emotional signature clusters. What are we talking about? Constantly see these images of black people being shot by police brutality, and you see the images over and over and over. So in your mindset, it creates an emotional state that may be problematic in terms of how your consciousness develops. Your CNS can be incapacitated by certain things. Primarily, this can happen via chemicals. We know about things like curare, C-U-R-A-R-E. These are like chemical compounds that can shut down your nervous system by altering like chemicals like acetylcholine. Infrasonic acoustic weapons. Perhaps you heard about in Cuba a few years ago. There were some people that complained about these headaches that they were receiving from being in this hotel, and people said this was biological. This was kind of warfare was going on. People were emitting these pulses of energy that caused people to have these massive headaches. So with infrasonic acoustic weapons, you got electromagnetic weapons, which is talking about the 5G, and particle beam weapons. People can beam things down. I mean, all this stuff from Star Trek and all those other science fiction programs, we're living it right now. So the Manchurian Candidate, I don't know you heard about that. Denzel Washington played in one, and it was a remake, but it was about a candidate who was being programmed with a chip that was in his head. Well, this is real science. You can put chips in people's heads in places that deal with memory, and then alter whatever you want to alter. Put it in the hippocampus. Hippocampus is for memory. So here you have a opportunity to now put electrode in the head and alter a person's consciousness. Beyond putting the electrode in the brain, we now know that there is technology that can be put into your skin, like microchips. So doctors have been studying this for years, since 2002, and think about now vaccine technology 20 years later. So these microchips can now measure your health status. So I just told you about DARPA. They're using this now to look at whether or not you have coronavirus. So with all these vaccines, we got to be very understanding that some of them may be, in the long run, utilized to kind of mark people and see where and who they are. I found this interesting because there's a young boy named Derek Jacobs who wanted to be one of the first people that was receiving one of these chips. And he unfortunately passed away at the age of 18 from a motorcycle accident, but he was a child prodigy that was involved in this type of research. So inside the brain, beyond that pineal gland, you have this area called the brainstem. In the brainstem, you have these dark areas that are deep in the brain. These dark areas are melanated. So we're at the Black Dot Cultural Center. We're talking about these black dots. We know about Dr. Richard King. May his soul rest in peace. Talked about the mental nerve tract. This is the mental nerve tract he's speaking of in terms of the medulla oblongata up to the pons, up to the midbrain area. All these dark areas are very important for controlling behavior. They also contain chemicals that are important for processing our human behavior. So when you look at this brain stem and you look at these colored areas here, the ventral tegmentum area, locus coeruleus, dorsae raphe, you got the substantia nigra, red nucleus. All these darkly pigmented areas in the middle of the brain are important. The red nucleus is considered to be an area for something called mirror neurons, like looking in a mirror. If I asked you, can you moonwalk? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe Michael Jackson with high waters and white socks moonwalking. So in your brain, that's already being registered. So those mirror neurons do that. They're actually pigmented neurons. Right below it is the substantia nigra. Substantia nigra. It means black substance. So what we have here is the substantia nigra as a dark area containing dopamine. On the bottom there's a healthy brain. If that area is not darkly pigmented and looks like the one up top, you can suffer from a neurodegenerative disease called Parkinson's disease. So this is not good. So this doesn't happen when you're 4 years old, 8, 10, 20 years old. It happens when you get older. It's almost like the melanin is absorbing the toxicity over time, and as you get older, it no longer can protect your body because it's not absorbed all the toxicity, and so it's no longer working as well anymore. So the person with Parkinson's disease may have a shuffling in terms of their gait. It's called festination. They have tremors at rest. You ask them to do something, they can't actually initiate a movement. So it affects posture, it affects movement. Well, the reality is, imagine if this system worked at a higher level, where you'd be dunking basketballs like black people do, melanated people do. Melanated people are fantastic at psychomotor skill development, things that deal with movement and rhythm. And so if you think about hip hop culture and rapping and staying on beat, well, the melanated centers in the brain allow for higher brain function. When they start to deteriorate, you see the problems in people's behavior. So again, to enhance and resurrect your pigment power, you need to be consuming some pigment-oriented foods to make sure that it happens. So the problem is our environment is filled with toxins, and it's those toxins that sometimes have an impact on how the body responds. What are we saying? Well, if you are in an environment where there's a lot of chemicals around, you have the potential for developing some neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease. Who knows, Alzheimer's could be the same thing. Sniffing in aluminum, sniffing in chemicals, sniffing in, and then it starts to deteriorate those brain cells, and that's why people that have problems in terms of their movement. So when we deal with this issue of environment, let's look at something else that we don't pay attention to every day. It's called chemtrails. So I know you may not pay attention, look in the sky, because many times you're just looking on your phone and looking down, and so our orientation is no longer to look vertically, but to stare at our phones and our hands. But up there in the sky, why is someone up there playing tic-tac-toe? Like with airplanes and flying around making designs in the sky. Well, those are chemtrails. And so you can read up on it. You can read up on what kind of chemicals might be in there, but those are not commercial planes playing tic-tac-toe in the sky. So I say, who is messing up my sky? How does a pandemic get worldwide? Open your third eye, your third eye, and maybe you start seeing from Tahiti to Russia to Georgia to Australia. How can something just spread so widely all over the world like this? So we might want to question what's happening in the sky. So is it that now we have so much going on in this world that now no need to spray anymore? Notice that on clear days you see those chemtrails in the sky. Well, it just seems interesting that as we're giving our presentation on August 14th at the Black Dot Cultural Center, wow, the skies were clear today. Amazingly. So you just wonder, what's the plan about controlling the environment with all these chemicals being sprayed, and is that one way that we're becoming polluted in our bodies? So there's environmental pollutants and pesticides that exist. If you heard of BPA-free bottles, like your water bottles, that stands for bisphenol A. Bisphenol A has estrogenic compounds in it, which means that they can influence your hormonal system. It can also be carcinogenic. So when you have some water bottles that say BPA free, they're supposed to be safer than the really, really thin bottles. Endocrine disruptors. It's a brother named Tyrone Hayes. You can look up his name where he did some work for a company, I think AstraZeneca. And he was studying a chemical called atrazine and noticed that these frogs in the environment, because frogs have very porous skin, were developing like 5 legs, 6 legs, 4 or 5 eyes, and their reproductive capabilities were kind of switched. Where males were looking like females, females like males, and so there's endocrine disruptors in our environment. So chemicals can create that. And so when many companies are spreading and putting chemicals in a water supply, sometimes by accident, because they're trying to get rid of the chemicals, or on purpose, it can have an impact on our hormone levels. Polybrominated diphenyl ethers, they're in chemical products that we may use for cleaning. Metals, aluminum's everywhere. You got magnesium, manganese. You got copper. I mean, you can take these elements in through the skin, breathing, tasting. You think about organophosphates. These are things that can inactivate. That is, they're movement-oriented chemicals that help you your locomotion in your environment. So things that can impact acetylcholine. And then you have paraquat, an herbicide. So we do eat vegetables and fruits, and some people eat all the skins of things that are coming from the store. I like to peel mine because you sometimes never know what's on the outside because of the chemicals. But paraquat, and the herbicide, looks just like something that can destroy the dopamine in the brain. When we get to studying neurotransmitters or neuroscience, there's a chemical called MPTP that is damaging to cells in the brain that destroys your dopamine neurons. Well, this paraquat looks just like that. So you now have some chemicals in our environment that may be attributing to why it is people developing Parkinson's disease. So chemicals, environmental pollutants, pesticides, we got to be careful about where we're at, what we're eating, because it can, again, lower your levels of how your pigment's working in your body. Many of you do not drink diet sodas, and I do not encourage that. And so you can look at this recent report about drinking this once a day can triple your stroke risk. It says the scientists behind the study said further research needs to be conducted to determine why there is an increased risk for both stroke and dementia in regular diet soda drinkers. But in an editorial accompanying I think it's the American Heart Association, accompanying the study, former president of the American Heart Association said that the main problem is that artificially sweetened beverages are marketed as healthier alternatives to sugar-sweetened beverages. So there is the problem. The system is not interested in you maintaining your health. They got to keep you sick so you keep coming back. So the diet drinks are sometimes one reason why you have all these mysterious illnesses that people have. We can do another discussion when we talk about health psychology to talk about the chemicals in our environment that have impact on our bodies. But sugar-sweetened beverages with artificial ones, that is, are not healthier alternatives. So as we conclude, I, along with a sister named Jay Hawthorne, created the Melanin Institute of Human Technology. My recent work, Pigment Power, discusses some of the science behind melanin and some of the historical significance. With a sister, Hawthorne has created a book called Melanin Guide to Spiritual Awakening. She has the emphasis on the foods and the chemicals that we can put in our bodies to enhance our melanated systems. She's a master nutritionist. She has her own juice bar. She has created recipes, and so that's not my area. But as a tag team, we have the opportunity to tell people how to advance their pigment power. So I definitely recommend both books. And you can check out the melanininstitute.org for more information on how we can now enhance and resurrect our pigment power. So for you to learn and study on your own and take care of yourself and feed your brain, fats, fatty foods, not fats that clog your arteries, but you want to stay away from the trans fats and polysaturated fats. But we're talking about things like your brain. Your brain is really made of fat. So there are some cholesterols that are very good for your brain. You got high density lipoproteins and low density lipoproteins. So the ones that are very important for your brain to work right are your high density lipoproteins. The low ones kind of sit in your bloodstream and can cause problems. So your brain again is made up of fat, so you want to kind of put that in your perspective. That if someone calls you a fathead, don't really feel bad about that. Blood levels of cholesterol. Again, when you go to your doctor and they tell you what your cholesterol levels are, pay attention to them because again they may put you on cholesterol medicines. That may not be the best thing to do. Look at your diet and manipulate your diet. Cholesterol is like a precursor molecule to make many of your hormones, so we can't say cholesterol is bad and you don't need it. It's about how you monitor which kind of cholesterol. High blood pressure is an issue in our community, and I've talked about that in other cases, that this whole ACE2 receptor by which this coronavirus is impacting the body, it is getting there by the receptor that deals with this angiotensin converting enzyme. So there are some people that are on ACE2 inhibitors for blood pressure medicines. I do not recommend that for melanin dominant people. And you can look at that on your own for research. I've written on it. People have given their experiences that lisinopril and drugs like that are not good for Black people. So if you are being treated for blood pressure medicines, ask your doctor for some opportunities for looking at calcium channel blockers or diuretics. So fish oils. Well, we know about cod liver oil, very important. Things that have, again, we talked about fats and diets earlier, where omega-3 fatty acids are important to help with controlling inflammation in your body. So the fish oils, you also think of, like mackerel and tuna, salmon, items like that may contain the right oils. And we know about grandma back in the day. She used to give us cod liver oil during the wintertime. And cod liver oil, yeah, it tastes nasty, but guess what? It was good for you because it helped you out to build your immune system during those winter months. And that's what we're going through right now. Vitamin D levels are low and people are getting more sick than they need to be. Homocysteine levels need to be low. Homocysteine is a chemical in the body that impacts actually your heart. If it's elevated, it can have an impact on causing strokes and other cardiovascular problems. So we want to look at controlling your homocysteine levels. So when you get your blood work done and you have cardiovascular problems, you might want to ask your doctor to measure that for you. And then exercise, all this information about, take the vaccine, it's going to help you. Take the vaccine. But no one's talking about diet. No one's talking about exercise. You got to move. You got to exercise and get your body energetic. That's also going to boost your pigment power and resurrect you again to back to being normal rather than this system controlling how your body's going to be. We got to stay healthy. And the only way to stay healthy is that you being committed to doing that. So I need a few free minds to go ahead and help deal with this. Got to get out the matrix. Get out the matrix and start focusing on your body. Stop listening to the news. Stop getting caught up in what other people are saying about how you need to take care of your body. A vaccine is not going to save you. It's not a treatment. Neither is a cure. You must create in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, everything you need to elevate your consciousness. And you can't wait on the media or some other doctors to tell you how to do that. You got to take advantage of that on your own. So step out of the matrix and gain control of your body. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the Black Dot Culture Center, plus definitely Brother Baba Ajamu for allowing me to be here for you and speak with you. You're the mastermind behind this Black Dot Culture Center. I appreciate the staff for making it comfortable for everyone to be here. I appreciate the attentive audience. And I conclude with the statement, all power to the pigments. Peace and love to you all.